Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual health education series. My name is Bradley Burris. I'm the Prevention Education Coordinator for People Against Rape. My pronouns are they, them, she, hers. Last week, we discussed methods of birth control, the difference between them, and ways to access them. If you have not had a chance to check out this video, I would highly recommend it. It's available on People Against Rape's Facebook page and Empowerr's YouTube page. For the next 2 weeks, we are going to be discussing healthy relationships. In part one, we will be identifying healthy versus unhealthy, how each relationship looks different, and touching on how abuse can play a part in the way we interconnect with others. That being said, we're going to get started by having our experts introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanel Jones, and I am licensed as a marriage and family therapist and as an addiction counselor, and I work for MUSC's Empowerr program.
Hey everyone, my name is Brittany Green, and I am the follow-up victim advocate at People Against Rape. My pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Hello everyone, my name is Sydney Conrad. I'm the Director of Education and Training for My Sister's House.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. So Tanel, we're going to start with you. What is a healthy relationship? And can you describe the features of a healthy versus unhealthy one?
Okay, so I did create a PowerPoint for people who like visuals. And so let me pull that up. It's not an in-depth PowerPoint, but just kind of some talking points. So all right, can you all see that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so relationships. What is a healthy relationship? A relationship that's based on equality. And I'm going to talk about some components of healthy relationships. So I do a lot of couples counseling and marriage and family therapy, and also every couple is different. So I oftentimes will go by what they want for their relationship, but there are some things to consider when you're thinking about any type of relationship in general. And so a lot of my focus will be just like how you develop yourself and how having a healthy sense of self maybe increases your chances of having a healthier relationship. So we all have basic psychological needs. These basic psychological and physical needs that we have really help us move through life. And we learn them first off based off of our family of origin. So even in an infantry, when you're a baby, you know, how you engage with your guardians and your parents, and they teach you certain things or you experience certain things and how they explain these things, you start to learn certain types of skills or thoughts about the world. And then thoughts about people, which later influence your life based off of like the type of peers you may choose, then the type of partners you choose, and then how you choose to engage with your family moving on. So again, these needs motivate our behavior, and their fulfillment influences our well-being. So safety, as you can see, safety is just about your need to feel safe from harm and that people that care about you. And so for each of these, I'm going to discuss mostly the self part, but there's also the other part. So our own sense of safety is we do what we can to protect ourselves, to make ourselves feel safe. And sometimes we do that in healthy ways, and sometimes we do that in unhealthy ways. If we think that, you know, maybe if I use alcohol to kind of not have these thoughts that I'm having, for you that may be, you know, you may feel like you're protecting yourself, but those kind of things can lead to some other type of complications. So there's different ways that individuals go about trying to maintain safety. The trust that I'm talking about here is obviously the self-trust. Self-trust is really a belief that you can rely on your own perceptions and judgments about things in this world. And then of course, that often helps you with the trusting of others. So a lot of times in relationships, most people are like, I don't know if I can trust this person. And so I'm often asking, trust them to do what? Because everybody is human and sometimes make decisions that may not be what you want them to be. And so trust is very tricky and can be very tricky. So I often say, if you can focus on your own self-trust, see how that works in the favor of having a healthy relationship. Intimacy, it can be physical and it can be emotional. Well, intimacy is just your ability to feel connected to your inner experiences. This is self-intimacy. I'm not talking about intimacy with anybody else yet, but self-intimacy is just the ability to feel connected to your inner experiences, including your own thoughts and feelings. So again, if you struggle with certain emotions and thoughts, that may make it hard for you to engage in a healthy relationship. And I think I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then self-esteem. Self-esteem is just your belief about your abilities and what you believe you can and cannot do. And so those oftentimes will impact whether you are engaging in healthy relationship behaviors. And then one of the other ones, and these are definitely not the only basic psychological needs, these are just more common ones, but the other one is control. And we all feel like we want to control everything around us, sometimes to the point where that can become dangerous and hurtful to others. But control is just your belief about your ability to feel in charge of your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And then that's self-control. And then we have obviously the opposite of that is the control that we feel like we have on others. And so oftentimes we really don't, and so that can kind of feed into trust and all these other things. So I just wanted to cover that. And so again, you may be able to think about where you are in your life, how these basic psychological needs have been shaped so far. If you are old like I am or older like I am, then you may have noticed the intense pattern. If you are younger and you're a teenager, you may consider, oh, what have my parents ever talked to me about these concepts, and what have I experienced? So those are just it's just very important to consider and to understand where you are with these basic psychological needs and how they play a role in your life. So in order, again, so these are some components of healthy relationships. These are just my thoughts and opinion as a relationship expert. I think you have to have a sense of self and self-capacities. Self-capacities are your ability to manage your internal feelings. So if you struggle again with managing thoughts and feelings, I do believe that can impact how you engage with others, right? So you want to make sure that you are able to work towards that feeling management and development, and also learn who you are as a person. Because if you know who you are, then I think it makes it easier for you to know what you don't want in a relationship, right? So that you're not necessarily just being in a relationship because you feel like nobody else wants to be with you, or whatever other reasons that come up that kind of lend itself to unhealthy relationships and then leads into violence. The second important thing is values. Values are this kind of, they're like the journey. You can never achieve your values. You can achieve goals, you set goals around your values, but values are just guides for your life. Like, what's most important to you? What do you want to get out of life? What do you want to get out of your relationship? So oftentimes when I'm working with couples, and even families, I'll ask them to say, what are the values that's important to you? What do you want your relationship to be about? So being able to talk about that with your partner, being able to know that for yourself. And if you both have different values, it doesn't mean that the relationship won't work. It just means that you want to talk about how do you incorporate those values in your relationship. Excuse me. So then the second component that's necessary for healthy relationship is being able to have clear, confident, and open communication. And that is being able to say the things that you need to say in a way that's respectful. And I'm using respect, but I want you all to understand that everybody has a different definition of respect. So you want to be able to talk about with your partner what that means. What does respect mean in your, like, what did you grow up understanding what respect means? But clear is just saying what you need to say, recognizing the reasons you're saying something and what outcome you're seeking by talking to your partner and what it is that you want. So being clear about what you want, expressing your thoughts and feelings, and just being open. So that's very important in a relationship. Another component is honesty and accountability. Obviously, I tell people secrets keep you sick. So you want to make sure you can be with a partner or in a relationship or friendship, whatever type of relationship that you're in, where you can be honest with that person, despite some of the, the feelings that may occur because of that honesty, and be accountable for your actions. Like, take responsibility for who you are in this relationship and the type of relationship that you want to have. Trust and support. So a relationship should be where there's trust, again, trusting that you are doing what you want to do in your best interest, and this person is also doing what is best for the relationship. And then being able to have support within the relationship, but also outside of the relationship. I think healthy relationships grow because there's no concern about another person having certain types of friendships or talking to other people. So being able to have support within the relationship and outside of the relationship is another component. Negotiation and fairness. This is, again, another communication style. So you want to be able to negotiate. Everybody, you're not going to always agree. And so when you're communicating with your partner or your family or whomever, you want to be able to, again, define what you want and talk about how what you want is going to benefit the relationship. Figure out ways to compromise, recognize that you're not the only person in a relationship, and how can the two of you work together to meet common ground. That may mean giving up something, each of you giving up something to get something. And so figuring out what that is and learning that. And so these are skills that are not often easy. I tell you, when I work with couples, it's not easy, and it does take practice, but it is important to be able to do if you want to have a healthy, long-lasting relationship. If you are in a relationship that there's money involved, you want to make sure that you both have your own financial and economic independence, where you are managing your own money, and then you talk about how you want to manage monies together if you're living together, or if you're making the decision to buy certain resources together. Make sure that you both feel comfortable about that process, and that you don't find yourself in a situation where you're being abused economically. Like, sometimes in some relationships, somebody might feel like, well, this person's paying for everything. I have to allow this person to say this to me, or they're going to stop giving me an allowance, or they're going to stop doing this. That's not necessarily a healthy relationship. You want to make sure that you're in a relationship that even if somebody's giving you money or paying your bills, that you still have a say about what happens to you, but what happens to your body. Again, being able to connect with others. So you want to be in a relationship where this person is not kind of jealous of you being around other people or having friends or talking to your family. And so that's crucial. If you start to notice in relationships where a person's like, well, why are you spending so much time with this person? Or I don't want you to be with anybody, or I only want your attention, or, you don't have enough time for me, then that could be a sign that, things to come that might not be beneficial or what you really want. You want to be in a relationship where there's non-threatening behavior, whatever that is. So even if you disagree, because you're going to disagree on things, that you disagree in a way that you feel safe and you feel like you can have a disagreement with that person and not worry about if that person's going to say mean things or call you out your name or hit you or put you out the house or whatever the case may be. So make sure you are in a relationship such as that. And then another major component is, if you are in a relationship and there involves sex, is that you feel safe sexually with that person, and that you do what you want to do and what you're comfortable doing, and not allowing that person to tell you what to do. So those are just a few of the things that are very important to have a healthy relationship. And obviously the opposite, if you don't have any of those, and it might mean you don't have a healthy relationship. So just some things to consider.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chanel, for laying that critical groundwork. My next question is going to be for you, Brittany. How do relationships look different? Family relationships, friendships, romantic, sexual?
Yeah. So I appreciate you, Tanel, for laying a lot of that groundwork for what I'm about to talk about, because all the things that are important in having a healthy relationship that Tanel just discussed are things that should be existing in every single type of relationship that you have with someone, whether that's family, friends, somebody that you're sexually intimate with, somebody that you're romantically intimate with, acquaintances, coworkers, you know, those basic levels of respect, and common interests and respecting boundaries, that's across the board. So when it comes to families, the differences with families, you kind of typically grow up together. You have most of the time shared values and belief systems. You spend a lot of time with your family typically when you're growing up. So sharing activities, having common interests, you know, those are things that are important when it comes to family. When it comes to friends, having those common interests, those mutual respects for your differences, because, you know, when you're in a friendship with somebody, you're not going to agree on everything 100%. That'd be so boring. But, you know, being able to say, you know what, I disagree about that, or I don't like that, or you know what, mac and cheese ain't cool, you know, but still being able to have a respectful and validating relationship. When it comes to romance, communication. You know, all the things that Tanel's already talked about as far as being able to compromise, having mutual respect for each other, respecting privacy, appreciating and supporting people in their hobbies and in their dreams, and making sure that if your relationship involves touching or kissing or sex, that you know, have a conversation about what that would look like for you and what a healthy type of physical relationship would be for you.
Thank you. And I guess, like, going off of that, do healthy relationships look the same for everyone? Are my healthy relationships the same as yours, the same as our friends? What is the difference? Is there one?
So there is a difference. Everybody has their own preferences. Everybody has their own styles. I know a lot of discussion over the last probably decade has been about like love languages. And you have touch, or giving gifts or acts of service, or kind words and gestures. You know, those are different for other people. So, you know, a healthy relationship for one person might be receiving gifts every week. And for another relationship, that could be something that could be manipulative or detrimental. Some people in relationships love having that playful banter where they tease each other all the time. And in another relationship, that might not be okay. They might take that in a different direction. And everybody has different boundaries. Everybody has different boundaries. There are, of course, the huge boundaries that you don't cross, when it comes to consent and abuse and all the different forms of it. But a lot of people have different lived experiences, so their boundaries, their beliefs, their values, and what they are wanting for a relationship are going to be different.
Thank you. You said it perfectly. Love languages are such a good example of how different it is for all of us in any relationship. My relationship with my mom might be different than my friendship, and it's so critical to understand how complex and dynamic these can be. And so my last question for you is, does this model change with age or different parts throughout our life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so absolutely. The same way that your beliefs might change, your values might change, what your goals might be, as that changes as you get older and have more life experiences, and your relationships could possibly change. As you get older, you know, hopefully know yourself a little bit better. So you're able to be more, assertive about what your needs are, and what boundaries you want to set. There's less of a fear of, confrontation and conflict, because life is short and you're kind of getting through there. And so you're more willing to forgive things, willing to confront people about boundaries. And also, just when it comes to relationships, as you get older, typically your group kind of gets smaller. As you get older, you may lose, family, you may lose friends. And so those intimate relationships are all the more important. And, as you get older, some things that when you were younger you might be upset about and angry about and have issues with, you may not take those as much to heart as you get older. So things definitely can change, and that's not for everybody. Some people will remain stagnant through their entire lives with their boundaries and what their beliefs are. But there's definitely room for change.
Thank you, Brittany. That was wonderful. Sydney, I'm going to ask you next. What is the cycle of abuse, and how does this play a part in what we might see as a normal relationship?
Yeah, great question. So the cycle of abuse is really important to understand. We have probably all seen stories in the news about maybe someone losing their life to their abuser, or hearing someone recounting abuse that they've experienced. And our thought might be, well, gosh, how did it get that bad? And so the important thing to know is that it doesn't start overnight. The abuse isn't an immediate thing, like first date or at a specific time. We see it happening and building over time. And so understanding that cycle of abuse is important, not only for you recognizing those unhealthy behaviors in your own relationship, but recognizing them maybe in someone that we care about in order to help them. So the cycle of abuse, it's a social cycle theory. It was developed in 1979, originally by Lenore Walker, when she was doing a survey of women about their experience in abusive relationships, and realizing that they went over a sort of a general pattern. Obviously, no two people are the same. Again, Brittany, I agree, life would be really boring if we were all the same. So every relationship is different, but we see a general pattern happening. And this pattern shows how behaviors are used over time by the abuser to control their partner. Things that they do that are purposefully manipulative, how this might include the things that we say, the things that we do. It might never include physical abuse. So showing, again, the common misconception that domestic violence equals physical violence. The cycle of abuse is really important in showing the things that we say and what we do, how we act in certain situations. Those are really important. So what the abuser does in relation to abuse or to their abuser, their victim, plays a big part. So when we're looking at this, again, understanding the emotional, verbal, psychological, financial, and other types of abuse we see occurring within that cycle of violence, knowing how incredibly long-lasting and serious the effects are for people who experience those other types of abuse. So not minimizing those experiences. We know that the cycle of abuse can last a really long time. It can happen once over the course of a relationship, or it could happen many times. And each phase can be slightly different in length. Again, they could happen really rapidly, or they could happen more slowly. But generally, our 4 phases are tension building, an incident, a reconciliation phase, and then a calm phase. And depending on who you talk to, they may combine that reconciliation and calm phase into one. So it would just be 3 phases, but still generally the same. So in our tension building phase, we see tensions are rising. There are issues in the relationship, certain factors like stress, job loss, finances, legal issues, other trauma, natural disasters even, we see this locally with hurricanes, can increase tensions that are building. But it's really important to understand while certain things like those tensions or drug abuse, substance abuse, mental health, those contribute to abuse, they do not cause abuse. Abuse is always a choice. The abuser is never justified in engaging in violent or abusive behavior. So we see over time those tensions are building, and then there is some sort of incident, an explosion. It could be a verbal explosion, a physical altercation, but we see behaviors that are displayed from the abuser to their partner that are in an attempt to harm, threaten, or intimidate their victim. Again, it could be verbal abuse, psychological abuse, victims. It could come out of nowhere for them. And children obviously are going to be negatively impacted if they're in the household, if they're witnessing the abuse, if they're hearing that outburst. After that incident, we see a reconciliation phase, or a honeymoon phase, we can call it. This is when we see the abuser feeling sorry for what they've done, feeling remorse, feeling fearful that their partner will leave or call the police. So we can see a big display of an apology, a regret. Maybe we're getting gifts. Someone is saying, I'm so sorry. This will never happen again. I didn't mean to hurt you. All of these things. And so obviously the victim could be feeling pain and fear, humiliation, feeling disrespected. And then they're confused because of this big apology that's coming. And they really welcome that apology. They want to believe that the abuser is truly sorry. So we see the hope to repair that relationship. We all, we're human. We want to see the best in people, and we see the same thing in abusive relationships where victims will say, well, I know the person that they can be. I know that they can be better. I want to be there for them. So we see that interaction as sort of that dynamic happening within this cycle of violence. And then we enter a calm phase. So this is a time of peace where we are seeing, it's just calm and peaceful between the partners. The abuser may agree to go to counseling. They might, create what feels like a really normal atmosphere. Things might be wonderful, but then the cycle begins to repeat. And so as we're thinking about this cycle of abuse, we might think, well, gosh, that reminds me of a time that I had a fight in my own relationship. We had, a time where I was really stressed, and then we had a fight, and then we made up. So you could be thinking, well, am I in that cycle of violence? Am I in this cycle of abuse? But the important thing to understand is the imbalance of power and control. If one partner is consistently trying to intimidate, threaten, harm their partner, that's very different than having a disagreement and then coming to, some sort of agreement or, agree to disagree or some, reconciliation after the fact. So there's an imbalance of power and control. So we need to consider that and look at the pattern of these behaviors. So again, as we're going and this cycle is repeating itself, we'll see an increase in imbalance of power and control. We'll see a decrease in the apologies. Maybe they seem less sincere. Maybe they are seeming like they're only in an effort to keep the victim in the relationship or to prevent them from seeking help. And then eventually we see the abuser maybe ignoring the accident, acting like it never happened, minimizing the abuse, saying things like, well, it wasn't that bad, or denying it completely, acting like nothing even happened, or blaming the abuse on the victim. So this is where we see some gaslighting, that psychological abuse, where we start blaming the abuse on the victim. I hate it when you do this, or I only did this because you did that, which again, no action ever justifies being abused within a relationship. So the abuser is, blaming the victim. They're feeling guilty. They're hurting and feeling disrespected on top of everything, and then they feel guilty for making their partner angry. So we could see the abuser using threats to harm themselves, to gain sympathy, again, to keep the partner from leaving the relationship. Abusers are really convincing. Abusers are charismatic. They are purposefully manipulative. So they will say things to just get a reaction. They say things to get what they want. And when survivors are really worn down, they're confused by that longstanding abuse, they might stay in that relationship, again, hoping that things will get better. They promised things would get better. So it's important to understand, this cycle of abuse as it repeats itself. We see those calm and reconciliation phases dropping out. We know victims from statistics and research leave their abuser 7 to 10 times before leaving for good. We typically see them leaving after an incident if something was really bad, and then returning during that reconciliation phase when there are apologies, promises that it won't happen again, and then going into that calm phase again where things are peaceful and might seem really great. But we want to, when we're thinking about this again for ourselves or supporting others, knowing that as these cycles continue, the likelihood for physical injuries increases when someone returns to that relationship. And obviously will get a lot worse if someone is leaving and returning 7+ times. So we want to consider, the barriers to someone leaving or to someone going back to that relationship. They've had real threats of harm to maybe themselves, to that the abuser will harm themselves again, maybe threatening friends, children, or family if they try to leave. And so just knowing how hard it is to recognize this cycle, understanding that this happens to other people, that you're not alone in this. It can be really frightening. It can be embarrassing. You might feel ashamed that this is happening, but you could feel like it's just a natural ebb and flow of a relationship. But know that this is studied, this is known, that it's purposeful, and abusers are using specific behaviors to keep their victims in those relationships, to make them feel like there's no other option, to make them feel like things are their fault. So when we're thinking about this and wanting to support someone, or maybe recognizing things within ourselves, if after hearing some of the information, maybe you think, I'm in an unhealthy relationship. Maybe you think someone that I know is in an unhealthy relationship. It's important to know you're not alone. You do not deserve to be abused. There's help out there. There's no reason to be ashamed or embarrassed by realizing what you're experiencing isn't right. That is not your fault. That is the abuser's fault, and there are options for you. So if you have questions about what's healthy, unhealthy, or even abusive, it can be really helpful. And I know Tanel might have some resources to put up on the screen. We utilize some tools called the Power and Control Wheel and the Equality Wheel. And so they highlight healthy or unhealthy behaviors in that Power and Control Wheel, and then healthy behaviors in the Equality Wheel. So you can compare them and contrast them and see, what am I experiencing in a relationship? Kind of picking and choosing and saying, well, I'm more of my relationship falls more on this Power and Control Wheel. Well, working to address that, or maybe ending the relationship would be the right option. So it's important to know what resources are in the community. My Sister's House and People Against Rape provide really incredible services to those experiencing domestic violence or sexual abuse. We have our crisis lines where you can access support groups and other resources. My Sister's House's crisis line is 843-744-3242 or 1-800-273-HOPE. And People Against Rape is 843-745-0144. So, if you're over 18, call us, seek resources. If you're under 18, it's important to be there for your friends, and support each other, be allies. Or go to a trusted adult, someone that you feel comfortable talking to the situation about, so that they can help you. There's also a confidential chat option with Love is Respect. They're a great online resource for youth. And if you text Love Is to 22522, you can actually do a confidential chat if you're under 18 and want to talk to them. We all need to understand and consider what's healthy, unhealthy, and abusive in relationships. So you feel like it might not happen to you, but if it does happen to you or someone that you care about, isn't it important that we know what to do and people recognize those signs? So I want to thank you all for joining us for this continuing conversation. And if you ever have questions or want to talk more about supporting your friends, supporting your family through an unhealthy relationship, you can always reach out to me at My Sister's House as well.
Thank you, Sydney. I was able to share a lot. I shared the Power and Control Wheel as you were talking, so they did get an opportunity to see that.
Great.
So.
Thank you, Sydney. That was wonderful. I think we often forget. I really appreciate the fact that you differentiated between being in an abusive relationship and having a disagreement. Because I think when we often hear situations of unhealthy versus abusive, it's really hard to differentiate.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful if we do an exercise. I'm going to read some behavioral situations, and each of our panelists will rate the situation as either healthy, unhealthy, or abusive. Okay, are you guys ready?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
The first situation. Your partner uses a pronoun or name you do not like, but stops using it when you ask them not to. Is that healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? Who wants to go first?
Unmute yourself.
I always forget that. So it is absolutely healthy. That goes back to a lot of what we said with boundaries and mutual respect. If you are, have a set of pronouns and your partner doesn't respect that, then that's not okay. But if they are able to say, I'm sorry, what are they? Okay, I got you. And that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of looking at it on the flip side, we might say, well, what if they continued using those pronouns? That's unhealthy, borderline abusive if they're using them in a derogatory way or a way that's meant to hurt you or someone else. So you can look at it on the flip side, like, is it really that bad? Well, yeah, it really is, because pronouns are really important to us.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Your partner texts you more than you want them to and gets angry if you don't respond. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I guess I can go first. Well, you have to set boundaries and say, first of all, I'm working, or no. I think you just need to be able to tell the person what's appropriate for you, but it's not necessarily, if it's not helpful for you, then I'll say, then address it. Because I don't want to say everything is unhealthy. It's just, if you feel like you can't address that person and then they are coming back at you in a combative way, then you may need to consider, is this a situation for you, especially if you can't get that person to see your side of why you're not able to text. So first, see if you can talk to the person. If not, then maybe think about what's next.
Yeah. And that just shows the importance of setting a boundary and knowing what you want in a relationship and what you don't want. And so you're absolutely right to be able to talk to someone, and we should be able to talk to our partner without fear of what they're going to say, without fear of retaliation or them being angry. And if that's how someone responds, that's not love and respect. That's not probably someone that we want to be in a relationship with. And so definitely unhealthy. And if we talk to them and they continue to do that and they continue to make us feel like we have to respond to a text message immediately, or we're fearful of what will happen when we finally do talk to them, then it's definitely bordering on abusive, and we would want to for sure end that relationship.
Absolutely. We love setting boundaries right here. Okay, so the next situation. Your partner controls your social media and email accounts, including reading your messages and telling you what you can share.
Abusive all day.
Yeah, I think
we have
that
yeah.
one.
We have the right to privacy. I've heard the argument, well, if we trust each other, so we should be able to see what we have on social media or read each other's messages and things like that. And in reality, it's the exact opposite. We trust each other, therefore we don't need to dig into all of that. We know that they're not doing something behind our backs that we wouldn't want them doing. I always say everything I do, I would do in front of my grandmother. So people have different ways of saying what they would do, but if we have trust and respect, again, we don't need to see all of that.
And I specifically chose this one because I feel like it's so prevalent. There's almost this constant culture of, yeah, you should see, who they're talking to. And it really goes back like to Nell laying that groundwork. Trust is so critical to have a healthy and supportive relationship. Yeah. All right, so the next one. You and your partner feel like you can share some things with each other, but you also feel that you can keep some things private.
That's healthy. I mean, you don't have to share every 100% aspect of your life with your partner or a friend or your family either. It's okay, and it's very healthy and appropriate for you to have your own privacy in your own life. That does not always include your partner.
Yeah, and I think at different times in your life too, like when you first meet, maybe it's not the time to share it, but then you're talking about a certain topic and you might have experienced something like that, and then you share it then. It's awesome to not put it all out on the table at first, have some things that you share and then some things that are just your own internal dialogue. Okay, last one. Your partner randomly stops by your job, even though you told them that it makes you uncomfortable.
So I think I would, again, if I was in that situation, I would ask my partner, help me understand what you want by stopping by my job. So sometimes I think it does take some communication, because here's the thing. When you start a relationship, you might be doing things in this relationship so you might be open to the texting all day. And then if you decide to shift or you get a different job, that requires communication so that the other person can understand. I also want to emphasize that everybody has a different idea of love, respect, and boundaries. So when you are entering any type of relationship, you want to make sure you're defining those for yourself and for each other, and understanding a person's historical background, because a person's idea of love is not probably going to be the same as yours. And so it's just very critical to set those things up. And so if a behavior is continuing, but you don't necessarily feel threatened by it, so to speak, so somebody just keep doing it, but they're not like gonna like yell at you because you're telling them not to, try to understand that person. Maybe they have some insecurities, and then that may open up a whole nother discussion about their insecurities and feeling like you can, you know, make them feel secure, because I don't really think that you can, but that's a whole nother topic. So just really try to communicate with that person as best you can to find out, help me understand, like, we keep talking about this. Why you keep showing up at my job? What is it that you want to happen? Are you worried that something's going on? Like, are you missing? Like, just try to communicate with that person. But if it does continue and you feel unsafe and you start to feel threatened and it's going to impact your ability to keep that job, then you might decide whether or not, then it's time to make a decision about, is this relationship important enough for me to keep?
Yeah. You're exactly right. Communication is so important. And so the statement as it stands, you know, if you've said that you feel uncomfortable, then yeah, that's definitely abusive. But taking it back a step, you're right to know, like, before it gets to that point and we say, what's going on here? And so thinking about too, maybe I'm younger, maybe I'm 15 years old and I've never been in a dating relationship before, and someone is coming and checking in on me. The difficult thing there is, if I don't have that experience within a dating relationship, I could confuse that for someone really caring about me, instead of like being possessive and controlling, needing to know where I am at all times, borderline stalking me. So again, understanding, you know, your partner doesn't need to know where you are at all times of every day. And if you express, I'm going to work, I'll talk to you in 3 hours, and 3 minutes later they're texting you and send back-to-back messages, or at work when you show up there, you know, that's controlling, and that's not allowing you to have independence and freedom. Even in a committed relationship, you should still be able to have time away from your partner, time with, you know, each your friends separately or family separately. You know, that doesn't minimize the importance of the relationship. So again, communication, understanding what we want in that relationship, setting boundaries is so, so critical. And if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, holding firm to that and saying, oh, well, you know, they didn't mean to hurt me, but they did. They made you uncomfortable. Are we okay with that? Like putting our foot down and saying, I'm not allowing this to continue. We're ending this relationship, and being confident in ourselves. Again, back to one of the first things that Tanel said, it's important in a relationship is feeling, you know, our own self-worth, our self-value. That's so important in a relationship. If we don't have that, you know, what do we have? So.
And I also want to add something common when I'm working with couples is there's this belief that the other person should know what you think and feel. And that is a dangerous thing. I know that people believe that they're telepathic, but we cannot go on the assumption that the people that we're in a relationship with, because we've been with them for years, should still know what we want and what we expect. You have to talk about that consistently, because you are an evolving person and that person's evolving. So please don't be in a relationship thinking that your partner should read your mind and know what you want. Oh my gosh, it's 6 o'clock. He know I want my coffee at 6. No, because that's a setup for setback, and it's not a good thing. So I want to definitely. That's one of the biggest traps that I see couples in, where they expect the other person to read their mind and know what they want and what they deserve. And you have to teach people how to love you.
Yes.
Because everybody's coming from a different way. So it's okay to teach people how to love you, how to talk to you, how to respect you, how to be in your life.
Right.
Do the work. Teach people how to do that.
100%.
Does anybody have any final thoughts as we're wrapping up that you'd like to leave with people?
That was mine. Other than, you know, I just also want to emphasize that I think, you know, if you are focusing on recognizing your value, your worth, that does help minimize people being attracted to you because they feel like they can run over you. I do, and I've been doing this for a long time. I do believe that abusers have a sense of who they can kind of engage with to get away with some of the things that they're able to get away with. So take care of yourself, love on yourself, and definitely recognize your worth and what you deserve.
Yeah. Love yourself first. Other people can't love you if you don't love yourself first.
I think my last final thoughts would be that it's okay to reevaluate. Like, I think most of us reevaluate, whether you do it like every 3 years. I try to do it like every 6 months. Relationships change, people change, and it's okay to think, where has this gone? And is this relationship with my friends, my family, my coworkers, my partner or partners, are these healthy? And am I okay with this? Am I comfortable? Just, consider doing that. Maybe you do it today after we're done talking and having this discussion.
That's a really good point, Bradley. I had a conversation with someone once who said, well, I've been dating him for, a year, and it's not great. And there were a number of unhealthy, abusive behaviors that were happening, but I've been in it for a year, so I can't have that time wasted. I thought, you're 17 years old. That is a drop in the bucket, right? You deserve so much more. So no matter how much time is spent in that relationship, if it is not healthy and productive and you aren't loved and valued, the only time wasted is the time spent in that relationship that you don't want to be there.
Absolutely. And you're deserving of a healthy, happy relationship.
Always.
So I just want to take the time to thank everyone who tuned in and engaged with us. I also want to thank our experts for taking the time to have this important conversation. I thought it was extremely productive and just enjoyable. So next week, we will be holding a more in-depth discussion about healthy versus unhealthy versus abusive relationships. We're going to do this through some scenarios and application techniques. If you have any immediate concerns regarding unhealthy or abusive relationships, please reach out to us. If you have needs of services for individuals below the age of 18, some individuals you can contact are D. Norton Child Advocacy Center, Dorchester Child Advocacy Center, or Darkness to Light. And if you are unsure of what the right resource is for you, please contact People Against Rape, Empowerr, or My Sister's House. We can connect you with that appropriate resource. If there are any specific questions that you want us to tackle the next time we gather, please message us, and we hope to see you then. Thank you.
Thanks.